Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Jaggett, and you are listening to episode 33 of the How to Life podcast. Welcome back. Or if this is your first time listening, welcome. I'm glad that you found your way here. You picked a good show to start with. Today I am interviewing Ray Blakney, who has a language school called Lingua and also hosts a podcast of the same name. He's fluent in several languages and he has traveled extensively his entire life. We're going to be talking about how great travel is. Who misses it? I certainly do, and I cannot wait to get back out there. I personally love traveling and I have no fear about it. But there are some of you who are a little wary, and Ray is here to talk you down. He's going to address all the reasons someone might give to not travel, give you a counterpoint about those myths, and I think in the end, it'll encourage you to give it a second thought. He's going to dispel fear, offer some great tips to get great fares and rooms, and really inspire you to get the education that only world travel can give you. I hope that at the end of this podcast, you'll be feeling like, yeah, this sounds so fun, and I'm glad that there really is nothing to worry about. So, all aboard, put your seat backs and tray tables in their upright and locked positions, and let's go. Hi, Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today on the How to Life podcast.
Laura, it's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get into this topic of funness, which is travel and languages, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and where you are now.
Sounds good. Okay, so here, let's see, the 30-second spiel. I was born in the Philippines. My dad was a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer there, so I'm a U.S. citizen, but I grew up in Turkey. And now I live in Mexico because my wife is Mexican. I also joined the Peace Corps when I was 26. They sent me to Mexico. I met the love of my life here, and we live here right now. But we still travel under normal circumstances 3 or 4 times a year, 3 or 4 months out of the year. In fact, we're usually traveling.
Well, I want to talk about the benefits of travel because I know there's some people who don't want to travel or they're afraid to travel. And I think there's a period in my life where I thought I can just watch National Geographic videos and movies of these different places, and that'll be good enough. We'll get into that a little bit more. I'm going to ask you, though, about traveling. Your father was in the Peace Corps. Did you travel?
Yeah, we traveled all the time. Oh, yeah. I mean, so to give you a little bit more of a background, so my dad's from the U.S., born in Vermont, but he grew up in Africa, actually, in Rhodesia. So when he was about 3 or 4 years old, my grandfather, who was a missionary, moved to Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, right now, but it used to be called Rhodesia. So they lived there. My great-grandfather, who's also, American, Harvard professor, he grew up in China because my great-great-grandfather was teaching over there. So my family has this long tradition of traveling way before travel was trendy. These days, kind of, with Instagram and everything, everybody wants to travel. Go back 50 years ago, traveling was not something that a lot of people did, but you're really missing out on personal growth and life experiences if you do not travel to other countries.
Well, continuing on this theme here, what are some of the reasons that you know of that people come up with for not traveling, and how can you dispel those?
Oh, well, the number one reason, and I live in Mexico, so this comes up all the time, is safety. The idea that if I go to another country, I will be robbed or kidnapped or something along those lines. There's a reason why you don't hear about that in the news very often. Or ever, almost, because it almost never, ever happens. I mean, despite what Hollywood wants you to believe, if it does happen, it's international news, especially if you're American. If an American got kidnapped anywhere outside of a war zone, this would be all over the news. When was the last time anybody saw that on the news? They didn't, and there's a reason for it. Now, I'm not going to say there's no risk at all in traveling, but I lived in Cleveland for a while. I wouldn't have gone past East 130th Street. I mean, there's certain areas in the United States that are a lot less safe. I live in the safest city in Mexico. Staying safe has a lot to do with being smart about your traveling. I mean, don't come here and start waving money around. If you have money to wave around, and you'll probably be okay. But personal safety, I have not in all my years actually experienced any kind of trouble when I was traveling. In fact, my car got stolen in the United States. I've never had anything stolen when I've been traveling. I've been, my apartment got robbed and my car got stolen in the United States. So I've had a lot more issues there.
And I have been charged way too much for a taxi in New York City. So
There you go. Yeah, it's not exclusive, right? My mom had her camera stolen, pickpocketed in a New York City subway. Don't worry about it, but you'll be fine.
it's not any worse anywhere else than it is in your own backyard.
100% agree. And the caveat there is the places you'd want to visit is not any worse than your own backyard. Again, don't go to a war zone. Probably not the best place for you to be traveling to. But anyone, go to Machu Picchu, go to, Japan. Well, Japan's safer than most places in the world, so you can travel there with no issues. Come to Mexico. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who travel to Mexico every single year with absolutely no trouble.
All right, good. So that's the first thing to dispel.
And one of the things to put in, to put it into balance, the benefit, we're going to talk about this, you get from travel so far outweighs that small risk. It will open your mind to different ways of thinking and kind of show you preconceptions about the world that you're going to find to be absolutely untrue the first trip you take. And you don't have to go somewhere super exotic. If you're not comfortable traveling, what I recommend is go to the United Kingdom, right? They speak English there, but it is still such a different culture that it's going to be exotic to you. You're going to see, wow, this is amazing. This is cool. You can communicate. If you're listening to this podcast, you speak English. It doesn't matter where you go. There's going to be people who speak English. It's the language of the world. You can go. We were in Morocco. Everybody spoke English in Morocco. It's not a national language, but everybody, at least in the tourist areas, spoke English. So you're going to be able to go there and get more comfortable. Start easy. Go to Europe. Go to Italy. Go to the United Kingdom. Then once you get more accustomed to it, then you could go to a little bit more exotic places, Southeast Asia. You won't be alone. There'll be a million tourists there with you under normal circumstances.
You're convincing me. That's true. I would recommend start with your native language.
That's it. And that's what all these people speak fluent English. And again, English will be spoken everywhere. One of the most recent trips we took, we went to Japan. This was right before my son was born. And when we went there, we studied, about 3 months of intensive Japanese. I run a language school, so we were able to get the teachers to come in and give us just some basic survival Japanese, because they said nobody in Japan speaks English. No. I think it was because they're preparing for the Olympics, because everybody spoke English. All the trains were in English. I mean, they had English announcements, Japanese announcement, English signs. We had no trouble finding people speaking English, even in Japan, which is notorious for people not speaking English.
So the language barrier is not an excuse. What
Exactly.
else? What are some of the other things that people will use as a reason not to travel?
Well, some of the other reasons is it's expensive. That's not true. If you plan ahead, you can get flights almost anywhere for probably as little as you spend on gas in a month. Another example I'll give is I went to Thailand recently. I got a round trip ticket from Mexico to Thailand for $500. There are services out there that you can use, like Scott'sCheapFlights.com. You pay, I don't remember, it's about $30 a year. And you just tell them, this is the airport that's nearest to my house. And every time there's this really discounted deal anywhere in the world, they'll just send you an email. You might get a $200 ticket. And sometimes these are what they call mistake fares in the travel industry, right? Where they accidentally listed it. A friend of mine flew from New York City to New Zealand for $299 round trip.
They have to honor it too.
They have to honor it. Exactly. That's the deal. They have to honor it. So if you sign up for this kind of service, they will email you as soon as that comes out from your airport. And you just have to be flexible enough to go in there and say, okay, I wasn't planning on going to New Zealand, but for $299, I'm going to go to New Zealand. And so once you get there too, the costs don't have to be expensive. Airbnb lets you pick your accommodation. So sure, you can rent out a luxury mansion for $1,000 a day, or you can rent out a place probably for $20 or $30 a day. Cook yourself, eat at home, eat locally. It's probably not that much more expensive than staying in your own city.
It's true. I've done this myself. My kids, especially my son, he travels a lot. He's going to love that website. What is it? Scott'sCheapFlights.com.
Yeah, I should get affiliate commission or something from them, because I recommend them to everybody.
By the way, there's other discount lines. There's Orbitz, there's Cheapo Air, there's Expedia, Kayak. There's another site called dansdeals.com. They also will in fact, I went to South Africa for $500 from New York City.
That's it.
That's great. And then what about when you get there? I found activities to do by using Pinterest and TripAdvisor. So let's talk about that a little bit, planning it out so there are no surprises. You will know what you want to do, how to get there, what the cost is. Are there any other little secret hacks that you know of?
Yeah, usually if you're going with more than one or two people on sites like TripAdvisor, Airbnb has their experiences now as well, where you can kind of do that. you can almost always negotiate a better price than what you see there. The amazing thing about traveling nowadays, because even when I was doing it 15, 20 years ago, the best you could do was Lonely Planet, where you could go in there and they would have places and they'd have recommendations. But let's say you go to Cusco, Peru, Lonely Planet might have 30 restaurants, but there are 500 restaurants in the city, not even mentioning the food stands on the corners and all the rest of it. You're missing out on a lot of it. Nowadays with the internet, that's almost entirely disappeared. First off, everywhere has cell phone service. And there's usually a plan when you get to these countries where you can kind of get what they call a tourist SIM. So if you have an unblocked phone from the United States, you just take your phone there, you take out your SIM card, they pop it in, you pay $30, and that'll give you data and basic calling functionality in the country for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days when you're there. That means you have GPS, you have WhatsApp or some kind of messaging service, and you can check the reviews on every single place before you walk in the door. So you do the sign, you get on your phone, you're like, how good is this restaurant? And there will be hundreds of reviews. So gone are the days of us having to try all these awful restaurants where everybody's getting sick. If people got sick, trust me, it's going to be a 1-star restaurant. Don't go in there. My general rule when I travel is if the menu's in English, I don't eat there. If you're going to another country and you want to get more local prices, go to places where they don't have the menu in English. If they have it in English, it means this is a tourist spot. The food, in my experience, is that it's never quite as good as the authentic one. You go around the corner off the main street, just like, half a block down, and they'll have the restaurant with the same food. Everything's half the price and probably twice as good.
So many good experiences when you travel. All right, I'm getting excited to start traveling again, but things are opening up again.
They are. If you want to go, well, depends on what passport you have, I guess, because, if you have the U.S. passport, it's a little harder. But I say come on down to Mexico because there's actually absolutely no restrictions in coming down to Mexico. And it will, hopefully this will pass in a year or so. So this might be a good opportunity to do this forward planning that we talked about. I'm still getting emails from all these deals saying, if you book a flight now, you can use it in the next 2 years at any time, and we'll give it to you for 80% off. And there are hotel deals that are like that in different countries in the world. In fact, my wife and I have booked 2 of them, one for Japan and one for, I think it was France, because it's 80% off 4 or 5-star hotels right now. And you can go anytime in the next 2 years and they will honor it. So you just buy them now and you kind of plan ahead and you just use them when people can travel again.
I'm going to ask this question for my own benefit. How do you get these deals?
There are websites all over the place. I honestly got this from a Facebook ad.
Right now, there are a lot of deals, a lot of incentives to get people out there. That's great to know. But let's go back to languages. That's another reason people don't want to travel, because they think they won't be able to communicate. And you run a language school.
That's right. That's right. My wife and I started a business called livelingua.com about 12 years ago. We are the 3rd largest online language school in the world, but we're the only one who started without millions of dollars in venture capital. It was me and my wife. Literally, I answered the emails and my wife was the first teacher. Language learning can open up the world to you. It helps a lot when you travel as well. As I mentioned, it's not 100% necessary. So if you're afraid, hey, I won't speak the language, trust me, people will speak English everywhere. So that shouldn't stop you from getting out the door. But if you really want to get the best experiences out of your traveling, make sure you do learn at least the basic language before you go to the country. There are 2 reasons for this. First off, obviously, it's for your own benefit as well, because you're going to be able to communicate on the off chance that you're in a place where it's a little harder to find somebody who speaks English. If you can ask for directions, ask the costs, get around, that's great. That'll help you as well. But the real benefit that I found is if you even make the effort to speak the language, the people open up to you. Everywhere you go, the people will open up. We've gotten invited to dinners and all the rest of it just because we try and we make a fool of ourselves in these other languages. People start laughing and they say, come on, I'll show you. I'll walk you over there. Even though we couldn't communicate, there's this bond because you're making the effort to understand not only their language, but when you learn the language, you're also understanding the culture, because language is very seeped in the culture of the country you're at. So they appreciate that. Whenever somebody's going to their country and they at least know a few words, the people in that country will really appreciate it, and you'll have even a more amazing experience when you travel.
What would you say to somebody who says, the pathways have closed? I'm 50 years old. My language pathways have closed. I can't possibly learn a language. What's your experience?
Laura, you're a doctor, and I think you can back me up. The science does not back that up at all. You can learn a language at any age. We have students who are over 80 learning languages with us, and while certain parts of it, more the memory retention part, not really the speaking part, take a little bit longer, it's not insurmountable. And like anything in life, it takes a little bit of work. We always think that kids are really quick at learning languages, but as somebody who has an 8-month-old right now who can't say a word, I can tell you, even our native language, we didn't learn to speak it in 3 months, contrary to what a lot of these commercials on TV, have you believe. You don't learn a language in 3 months, whether it's your own or not. It takes a little bit of time to learn how to speak a language. So be patient and keep at it. Have fun with it.
I'd also like to add that a lot of our blocks, a lot of the reasons that adults have trouble learning anything new is because they have this knowledge that they don't know how to do it. So that resistance is there. Also, we've been taught, well, if you haven't put in the sweat and tears, you haven't earned the right to learn how to do this well. Whereas children, they have no resistance. They don't know they can't do it, so they just do it.
That's it. And I'll be honest, we find that the more educated the person is, the more that mental block they tend to have. And the reason is because, if let's say you are highly educated, you're used to being eloquent when you speak, right? Able to compose your thoughts and and then suddenly you go and start learning another language and you're a 3-year-old again. You're like, me want milk. Give me. I mean, that, and it's really kind of hard to put the pride aside for a second and say, okay, I need to go through this again, be a child again to be able to talk about whatever it is I want to talk about. So my advice is enjoy it. And a story I always give when I was learning Spanish, because I wasn't a kid, I was in my late 20s, almost 30 when I learned it. There are a lot of false cognates in languages, right? So I was trying to come up with a Spanish word and I just said, sounds right, embarrassed. How would you say that? Embarazado. So I'm like, oh, that must be it. So I was telling everybody, I'm embarazado whenever I got embarrassed. Yeah, that means I'm pregnant. So I like to tell people for the first 3 months in Mexico, I was pregnant until somebody told me, I don't think you're saying what you think you're saying. So enjoy it. You're going to make a fool of yourself. Just live with it, and get past it.
But no one is going to judge you as harshly as you'll judge yourself. The native speaker, when you say that, will be amused, but they're not going to say, wow, what a dumb guy that is. They're going to be endeared. They're going to help you. The native speaker, when they see you're trying, they go out of their way to help you. And think about yourself as an English speaker. When someone who doesn't speak your language is trying to communicate, we bend over backwards to help them, to try to anticipate what they're saying and, not even correct them. Just, I understand what you're saying. And then follow through.
It's about encouraging. And that's what you'll get. You'll get a lot of encouragement when people try to, when you try to speak that language. Again, you're going to make so many friends and then your language is just going to get better because it's going to kind of build on itself. And it's a great way to learn a language. So yeah, enjoy it. It's like the same theme with travel and with language learning because they're so intertwined. Enjoy it while you're doing it. Don't worry about it. And you'll get much more out of the experience.
In your school, how many languages do you offer?
We teach 11 languages, from Chinese to Portuguese to Spanish to English.
You teach English as well?
We do teach English to foreigners as well.
So let me see if I can guess the 11 most spoken. Okay, so
let's do it.
English and Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, okay, French, Italian, Tagalog. Is that on there? That's not okay.
It probably is. It might be for population, but not for demand. So.
Japanese?
Yes.
I'm at 7. There are 4 others. Russian?
Yep.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know. Give me the other 3.
Let's see. I might miss one. Arabic, even though that's broken down into so many dialects that it might as well be multiple languages as well. We teach Portuguese because that's not only Portugal and Brazil, but also different parts of Africa. And I'm at Korean we have in there as well. That's not because of the number of people spoken it, but there's actually a lot of demand. A lot of people, English speakers, want to go to Korea. So there's a lot of demand for people to want to learn Korean. A whole K-pop culture is really growing. So we got a lot of people, hey, I like K-pop. I want to learn Korean. We got a lot of those. So
how do you find your teachers?
In the beginning, it was a little bit of work, but now they find us. We have an HR kind of application system, and we get 150 applications a week for teachers across all of the languages. So right now we don't actually have to do any outreach. They kind of come to us. We have an academic team with over 35 years of teaching experience, and they interview them. So there's 3 people on that team. And so we only get real teachers. They're not just native speakers. Like myself, I speak English. I have no business teaching English.
How does your platform work? Because it's all online, correct?
That's it. When you sign up with us, we give you the first lesson, 30-minute lesson, absolutely for free. We also give you a learning style quiz. So we've worked with like a psychologist to kind of come up with this learning style quiz built around the kinesthetic, the auditory, and the visual. So you take that, and then we pair you up with our teachers using exactly that methodology because we've actually given a similar test to our teachers. So we know what their teaching style is, and we match you up with the teachers for you. So we're very different from a lot of the language directories that are online, which is Here's 2,000 tutors. Have fun. We give you this test. We recommend 1 to 3 teachers for you. We give you the first class for free. And then if you like it, you sign up for 1 hour or 50 hours, however many you want. And you can schedule it all through our system. So you got to go in there. There's a calendar. You pick the date. We take care of the time zones for you. And then you have the class on Skype, Zoom, whatever you prefer.
I think many people don't realize there are different types of learning. It's not just auditory.
Yeah, and so you can actually go onto our livelingua.com/quiz and just take the quiz. You don't have to sign up for a class in order to take the quiz. But if you do sign up for a class, we'll have you take the quiz as well, because we want to know that about you. But if you're just curious right now, go on. We don't ask for your email. We don't require you to sign in. Just go and take the quiz. Have fun. Enjoy.
What type of students come to your school? Are they like going to Peru next month and just want to get a little crash course? Or they're moving to a country and want to learn the language more in depth?
The answer is yes. So we get students who want almost everything. When you sign up, we actually ask you why you want to learn. And in the beginning, I thought we would have this big skew towards, let's say, I'm learning it because I need it for my work. That's a big one, right? But people learn it for relationships. People learn it for fun. We have a lot of retirees who are doing it for mental exercise as well. They just want to keep their mind sharp, so they're learning languages. We do get the people who are either learning it for travel, that's more of the crash course. So we offer kind of what we call a survival Spanish, survival Japanese course, where I'm going as a tourist. I just need to learn how to order at a restaurant and get around. We get expats. So I'm either moving to the country or I've already moved, and there's no teacher where I'm at, or it's not easy for me to get to the school in the city. So those are generally the categories. We have 8 categories of reasons why people learn a language. We customize all the programs for each one of our students. We don't have this like one size fits all. Here's your book. Let's work through chapter 1. We don't do that. We customize it for each one of our students. So it doesn't matter if you have one goal or multiple goals. We'll kind of make a program for you.
How long do the programs usually last? Or is it dependent on the student?
100% dependent on the student and what their goals are. We've had students with us for over 8 or 9 years now, taking classes with us. We've had kids who are doing homeschooling, and they have been with us since they were 5, and they're going to be, I think they're about to graduate from high school almost. And every single year they've been taking lessons with us. I mean, they switch teachers every year, so there's a new learning style. But they've taken classes with us as well. As opposed, there's other people who, hey, I have to take the TOEFL exam for English. I have 1 month and I need to cram and get it all in there so that I can get a good score on the exam. And they're only with us for a month. And hopefully they come back to us later. It's like, I got the score I was looking for, and I applied for my visa or whatever they need the score for.
What is a typical class like? And how long does it last?
Generally, the classes are 1 hour long. Now, we allow people to do 30 minutes up to 2 hour or up to 2 hour lessons. But I would say 80 to 90% of our classes are 1 hour long. The general class, the way that it works, if you've been with us a little while, for example, and this can change depending on the student's needs, but it starts with a 5-10 minute review of what you studied in the last class, introduction of a new topic, and then the teacher will have created exercises for you. Again, based on your learning style. So let's say flashcards for the visuals, audios for the auditory, and maybe some kind of interactive thing for the kinesthetic learners. And you're going to learn a new concept, kind of build on what you've been learning up until then. And at the end, there's going to be kind of a review and kind of some application of it, because the best way to learn is not to sit down and conjugate these verbs on this piece of paper. I did that for French for 12 years. I can't speak a word of French. But at the end, they'll make you use it in whatever way is the most comfortable for you. That's the way that you cement a language. So all of our classes are built around that. We use the system called language immersion. It's what I used to learn Spanish when I came here to Mexico. It's the idea of, we don't only teach you the language, but we teach you the culture. And that makes everything you're learning more relevant, right? Instead of saying, how do I conjugate to be in the past participle? That doesn't, for me at least, that doesn't trigger anything in my head. But if you know that, oh, this is what you say when you meet somebody, or you come to Mexico, this is what you say when you order a meat taco at a taco stand in the street. Oh, well, I have a story, I have an image, I have something in my head that I can relate that to. I immerse myself, I start thinking of the situation. That's language immersion. And that's what our teachers kind of implement with our online classes.
I mean, I took language in school, and I don't remember that being offered as a way to learn the language. It was very textbook. Here are the verbs, here are the conjugations. Now you figure out which conjugation you need to use. And that's what always stumped me up. It
didn't work for me. That's it. And I thought I was bad at learning languages. I mean, I grew up speaking multiple languages, but we kind of spoke them in the home, and in Turkish we spoke in the street. So I never studied a language. I just kind of went out and learned them, right? So the first time I tried learning a language was French. And wow, was that awful. I mean, I remember être, and I just conjugated that. Like, I never made it past like beginner French in like 12 years. It was awful. So I just assumed, I'm like, wow, I'm really bad at learning languages. Until I joined the Peace Corps, and this is the method that they use to teach languages. It actually originates from the U.S. State Department. They're the ones who developed it because they sent diplomats to these countries, usually for 2 to 3 year stints. And if you go the traditional method of the conjugate verbs and all the rest of it, they're not going to be able to communicate at all if they have a 3-month notice that, hey, I'm going to the Middle East and I need basics, modern standard Arabic. 3 months to learn that old methodology didn't work. So they developed this as the methodology for people to learn languages much more quickly and really become fluent at it. Immersion will get you conversational very, very quickly. If you need like to read and write fluently, that's a slightly different skill set.
But usually it's the case when you want to learn a language, you just want to learn to communicate. And that's actually much easier. And with this style that your school offers, it's more real world.
That's 100% true. And if you want to get a kind of a taste of it, I'll do a quick little plug. I actually started a podcast about 3 months ago where we use this methodology, 100% free, the Live Lingua Spanish podcast. We start with a conversation, and then we break it down over the course of 10 to 15 episodes. And then we repeat the conversation at the end of it. And I guarantee to you that by the time you go through those 15 episodes, you will understand that conversation. So it's kind of like a survival, we call that survival Spanish course. So, listen to that. I release an episode every single day. They're about 1 to 5 minutes long. And hopefully by the end of it, I'm not going to say you're fluent, but you'll be able to, 1, get a taste of what language immersion's like. And 2, it'll teach you enough that you can come to Mexico and kind of just get around. The reason I made the podcast was, I think 20 minutes is the max most people can do.
Keep it short.
Keep it short. And it also makes it less intimidating for the learners. 1 minute, maybe a little longer if you repeat it to yourself. I put exercises into the podcast, but that's it. 1 minute.
What else can you tell us, Ray?
Well, like everything in life, whether you want to learn a language or whether you want to travel, make sure you take the first step and kind of commit to it. So if you've been afraid to travel before, go and apply for your passport if you don't already have it, right? Amazingly, when I was growing up overseas, I just assumed everybody had a passport. I thought that was just an ID. I think last I heard, only about 20% of Americans actually have a passport. So if you haven't traveled, take that first step. Go and apply for your passport right after you listen to this. It's not that expensive. I think it's like $50. You send in some photos. You'll get the passport. You'll have taken that first step. You want to do a language? Come to Live Lingua. Go somewhere else. We offer the first class for free. No money at all. So just kind of go in there, take that free lesson just so you can see that language learning is possible. There are free apps on your phone you can download as well. I'll be honest, you will not be fluent in a language from the free apps, but the idea here is to take that first step, to get like a feeling for learning a language so you're not quite as intimidated when you have to take the next step and the next step and the next step. And before you know it, you'll be speaking it.
It's true. What are some of the apps that you like?
So Duolingo is the biggest one out there. And I think it is the most downloaded app in the world, like across any industry. I mean, it is the most popular app out there. It's great for learning vocabulary and basic phrases. Babbel is another one. Both of them will teach you vocabulary and phrases. They do say they use real world conversations, but we got so many students kind of starting there and then coming to us frustrated that they can't speak that I found that that's not really the case. But it's a great way to start. I mean, it's such a small time commitment. They have those reminders in there. Hey, you haven't practiced your words today. And they have a lot of these built-in incentives for you. So it's definitely worth it to get started. Mm-hmm. I will put a caveat there, though, for Google Translate. It works very well for Latin-based languages, translating between them. So Italian, French, Spanish, German. Yeah, we tried it with Japanese and Chinese.
Not so much.
Not so much. Those are such contextual languages that it still has a lot of trouble with those languages.
All right. A question. Languages that use a different alphabet than we do. Is there any fear? Does it make it any harder to learn that language if you're just going to speak it?
Yes, unfortunately it does, but not because of the alphabet per se, right? There are exceptions. So Japanese is not actually that hard for an English speaker to learn because the sounds are the same. The challenges come in with Korean and Chinese and Thai, for example. They're what you call tonal languages, and they have specific tones in there that most native English speakers, we can't hear them because we just did not grow up with those tones. So an example I give is when I went to China, I spent 3 months backpacking through China. This was many years ago. My sister taught English in China, and I was visiting her. And I was going around asking for tea. And I was like, oh, that's easy. So one T I thought was Iga Cha. Apparently not, because there's a tone on the ga and there's the cha. There's something I should be doing with the cha. So I was actually asking for a dog or something. So I would go into these stores and everybody would be like looking at me like, why are you coming into my store asking for
store?
Exactly, you're in the wrong store. But then they would repeat it back to me. This is the way you're supposed to say it. I couldn't hear the difference. I mean, to me, it sounded exactly like what I was saying. It's because this is actually a brain thing. So it can be trained. It just takes a lot more work for us to train ourselves to hear those tones.
Well, the same can be said in Spanish with the rolled R. That is not something that English speakers know how to do. So, but you can get the point across.
Yeah, and you can learn it. And I mean, I was lucky because I played the clarinet and the saxophone when I was growing up. And you actually do the same tongue movement as when you're doing staccato on the instruments. So I was actually able to roll my R's when I came to Mexico. I thought, but that was pure luck that I actually, as a child, played woodwinds and that, so you can learn it. Learn the saxophone. Apparently that'll help you roll your R's. So.
What languages do you speak before you started your language school?
I spoke English, Turkish, and Cebuano before. Actually, the order would be Turkish, Cebuano, and then English.
What's the second one?
Cebuano. It's a dialect in the Philippines. In the Philippines, there are over 750 dialects. Tagalog is the main language, but Cebuano is spoken around Cebu City, which is kind of the southern part of the Philippines.
And what languages have you learned since you have become an adult and have started your school?
So I speak Spanish fluently, and I can actually get around pretty well in Japanese now.
You have a bio that I really, really enjoyed. The first time I ever met you, Ray, I read your bio and I love it. I'm going to read it now. I'm like every other Filipino American who grew up in Turkey and live in Mexico that you know. I run an online language school, a social media network for 200,000 students in K through 12. And you're currently building a podcast, interview search engine. You also do martial arts.
That's right.
How do you have time to do all of this?
Discipline, honestly. Now with an 8-month-old, a little of it gets thrown out of whack.
You have an 8-month-old. What languages are you going to teach him?
Well, English and Spanish is a given. Cebuano is not as practical, but we're actually looking to move to Asia somewhere. We're looking at Southeast Asia, possibly Singapore. We'd like him to learn Mandarin as well. So if he can be a native speaker in Mandarin, Spanish, and English, like speak them like a native speaker, he should be okay.
That covers the world.
Pretty much, I think 2/3 of the world's population he can speak to in their native language.
Where can we find you, Ray?
Sure. So you can find me either through my businesses, livelingua.com, LIVELINGUA.com, Podcast Hawk, which is my new project, is what I'm spending most of my time on, podcast and the Animal Hawk. And now I'm actually creating my own personal website, RayBlakney.com, BLAKNEY.com.
Your podcast can be found on all the podcast platforms?
That's right. All the podcast platforms or on livelingua.com/podcast as well. We have all the episodes with some additional exercises related to the episodes. Exactly.
All right. You've heard it. There's no reason to not learn a language. There's no reason not to travel. You can find Ray at Live Lingua and open up the world to yourself. Ray, thank you so very, very much. It was delightful speaking with you. I learned a ton. I'm sure this is going to be very eye-opening for the audience. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Laura, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I am so ready to travel again. Who's on board with me? Ray mentioned some awesome sites to get deeply discounted fares, rooms, activities, and all of that information, as well as how to contact Ray or Live Lingua, can be found in the show notes at howtolife.com/033. If learning a new language is something that you always wanted to do, Live Lingua and the podcast make it so easy. There's nothing to lose. Just head over there and check it out. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you've been enjoying the show so far, please take a moment to give it a 5-star rating in whatever platform you're on right now. Also, check out the How to Life Mominars on YouTube. These are short video tutorials on how to do basic life skills. And they are really short. They're usually no more than 5 minutes. You can also just head over to my website, howtolife.com, and all the podcast episodes, and every Mominar can be found there as well. Thank you again for listening today. I will meet you here again next week. And until then, you know what to do. Take care of yourself. Have a fantastic week. Be easy about everything and give yourself a break. You are doing incredibly well. It's all good. You got this.